If someone rewrote Madame Bovary in 2020, Emma would probably spend hours endlessly scrolling on Instagram and getting FOMO, right? That feeling that she's missing out on something and constantly feeling frustrated because what she thinks she's missing out on just doesn't exist. Who is Emma Bovary? What can be so special about a wife from the 19th century? Why is a novel that was first published in 1856 still relevant to us now in the 21st century? And why do so many contemporary writers love it so much? Hi, my name is Juan, and today I'm going to talk about Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. Before I talk about why Madame Bovary is a novel everyone should read and why it is still so popular, I want to go back in time and talk about why the novel's publication was so controversial in the mid-19th century. One thing you need to know is that Gustave Flaubert spent 5 years of his life writing this novel. He labored over every single sentence, and the result came out in serial form first and then as a single novel. And everyone who is familiar with 19th century novels knows that this is how novels were published back then. So there is nothing unusual about the publication of Madame Bovary. What is unusual is the pains Flaubert took in creating it. Flaubert was almost 30 when he began writing Madame Bovary, and he was almost 35 when the first installment came out. Another thing you need to know is that Madame Bovary caused a huge scandal. Why? Because the novel dared to criticize bourgeois society and its values. Now let's look at how the novel does that. Early in the novel, Emma Bovary is a simple provincial woman who was raised by nuns as a child. It does not get any duller, it does not get any more conventional. Perhaps the most interesting thing about her is that she loves to read. And she reads everything she can get her hands on. Novels, magazines, feuilletons, the labels on shampoo bottles, you name it. The problem is that Emma tends to read rather literally, let's say. And not only that, but she also wants to have the kind of life that she reads about. She wants to experience passion, she wants to go to glamorous parties, but her reality is that she marries a mediocre and dull provincial doctor, Charles Bovary. Now, throughout the novel, reading continues to be an escape from Emma's daily life, and soon she finds another one, having love affairs. The problem with that is that having affairs soon turns out to be every little bit as frustrating as reading about a life she'll never have was. Through the novel's main character, Flaubert criticizes the established bourgeois, or if you prefer, middle-class values. A bourgeois lady like Emma Bovary belongs squarely in the domestic sphere. Her only role is to be a good wife to her husband and a good mother to her children. In the 19th century, there was no other option for women of her social class and background. Of course, not everyone agreed with that even back then. Some people opposed those values and tried to resist them. In the same way that nowadays not everyone lives according to societal norms, well, that was the case also in the 19th century, and Madame Bovary is an example of a strong critique of those bourgeois values. You see, Emma Bovary struggles between doing what she's supposed to do according to the hegemonic values of her time and following her desires. But she ultimately follows her desires. That is why Emma Bovary is a masculine character. She has agency, she acts. She's not passive or merely reactive. She's in control, and this is key until the very end. And although the plot and the ending of Madame Bovary are well known even by those who haven't read the novel, I am not going to talk about them more than I already have, so don't worry about that. But yeah, Emma Bovary is always in control. Emma Bovary is an outlier in the literature of the time, and that is why the novel caused such a scandal. Emma's continuing adultery was simply too much for many people to digest, and the ending was also controversial. If you've read the novel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Ultimately, Emma does what she wants to do, what she desires to do. And that is why I said that she's a masculine character. Some critics would use the term phallic character when talking about Emma Bovary, so that's something to think about. Emma has agency in a way women, whether fictional or real, were not meant to in the 19th century. Just to illustrate how shocking this novel was to so many people at the time, at some point Emma meets her first lover in a cathedral. If that is not meant to be a metaphorical slap in the face of the Christian bourgeoisie, then I don't know what is. But why is the novel so relevant to us now? Believe it or not, some of the moral/legal conflicts that Madame Bovary raises remain unresolved to this day in many countries, even in many so-called first world nations. To me, reading Madame Bovary can work as a way of seeing how far the emancipation of women has gone, but also how current middle-class values in our societies still have a lot to do with those 19th century bourgeois values. For example, our concept of maternity, of what being a mother is, has changed very little. Yes, women are now not only allowed to work outside the home, but also expected to because of capitalism, but they are still meant to be mothers, and the concept of a good mother is still pretty much the same as it was in the 19th century. It hasn't changed much if you think about it. Go and check out the list of countries and territories where abortion is not yet legal, and you'll see at least part of the picture. Also, adultery or cheating may not be a crime in so-called Western countries anymore, but it is socially censored, and it continues to be regarded as a lot more shocking when the cheater is a woman in a heterosexual relationship rather than a man in the same kind of relationship and in the same circumstances. But I think that Madame Bovary is also relevant to us because although mass culture did not surge until the 20th century, and by mass culture I mean radio, movies, television, its origins were actually in the 19th century when newspapers and magazines began to be published. And there is an implicit critique, I think, on that early version of mass culture or proto-mass culture in Madame Bovary. If someone rewrote Madame Bovary in 2020, Emma would probably spend hours endlessly scrolling on Instagram and getting FOMO, right? That feeling that she's missing out on something and constantly feeling frustrated because what she thinks she's missing out on just doesn't exist. And because Madame Bovary continues to speak to us, that is why it is a classic, and that is why you should read it as soon as you can. If you don't already own a copy of Madame Bovary, I've added links to the different editions in English and French available from the book depository in the description box for this video. If you get your copy from any of those links, or even any other book you like, it doesn't have to be Madame Bovary, I will get a small commission. So that's a nice way for you to support my channel without paying anything extra. I don't think it is too daring to say that Madame Bovary is the first modern novel, or at least one of the first. Its style does not seem strange to contemporary readers, and perhaps the main reason for that is that although Flaubert thought of himself as a romantic, which is rather old-fashioned now, his contemporary Émile Zola thought of his work not even as realist, but as naturalist. I've always thought that Madame Bovary is almost cinematic because of how it is constructed, scene by scene, and that is fascinating because movies hadn't even been invented yet. But the point is that the novel's structure and the ironic tone of the narrator, which I haven't even talked about, make Madame Bovary incredibly accessible to readers. If you want to read a classic that does not feel like hard work, I think Flaubert is your guy and Emma Bovary your gal. But do not just take my word for it. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Often the best thing about reviewing books on YouTube is responding to the comments and having a chat about great books. So let's talk about Madame Bovary. That's all from me. I hope to see you again very soon. Bye for now.